All right. We are back once again after a couple of week break. Michael and Israel here from Bucks Island with another Tech Tuesday. We got a little something new in the background. So in our hiatus, we had some additional stuff done in our little media room, which is looking pretty sharp. So I will say mainly we didn't do the last 2 weeks because of me, because I had to take my daughter down to Disney for a band trip, which ended up being successful. Nice weather down there, so had a lot of fun. Did I hear you went to a school the last week?
Yeah, had to go to Yamaha school. Have to go every so often to maintain my Master Tech qualifications. So
You get any tidbits on things that are coming?
audio is soft.
Audio is soft. Soft.
By now.
Well, Colin, make sure you turn your volume up on your device. But here, let's see if that helps. Is that any better? Testing 1, 2,
3, 4. He is deaf too.
I know. So that's why I'm sitting here trying to weigh in on how much of a. Okay. Well, is anybody else having an audio issue? Every now and again, when I do these, I do get somebody. Gotcha. I do get some people their device will act funny, and everybody else is fine. So
blow everybody else's ears out.
Let's see. So let's jump in with a question, and we'll see if we can help Steven. Steven out here. Let me resize this real quick so that it all fits on the screen. Oh, we got the tornado sirens going in the running their little test. All right, Steven. So my graphs are not reading depth or sonar DI correctly on the front of the boat. Helix 7 DI hooked to Minn Kota Ultera with built-in transducer. I assume the transducer is bad.
It could be, or could be a setting on the actual unit itself. I know and there's another thing it could be on the sevens have their own dedicated adapter for the built-in transducer. So you have to look at that adapter, make sure it says it's the right part number. Most of the ones that are for the 8 and above say not for sevens. For whatever reason, the pins are different, so it doesn't read if you have that adapter on there. So we'll assume you got the right adapter. You'll need to go into your settings as well under Sonar and scroll down to where it says transducer, and you need to pick built-in MDI transducer, because the unit's going to default to a regular transducer, so you have to actually go in there and pick the Mega DI built-in transducer, or it will not read.
Gotcha.
So I would do that first, and then go from there.
Have you seen with those? Really, I guess with any of the Minn Kota motors, it's all the same built-in. Have you seen many transducer issues?
I've seen a few bad out of the box. I've actually seen some that were reading strangely. It was like all over the place. It was actually reading death, but it was just, you could tell there was something wrong, and ended up actually having a bad power cable on the unit.
Gotcha.
Because they have a ferrite in there, and you can feel that ferrite. If it's really hot, then there's a problem with the actual power cable. It's getting enough power to power the unit up and to function properly. It just interferes with the sonar.
Gotcha. So, all right. Hope that helps, Steven. Let's see here. Bought a new Bentley with a 115 Mercury. When is first service?
Typically within 20 hours. If you go over that a little bit or go under that a little bit, it's okay. If you don't make your 20 hours within a year, you need to do it within a year. So
And so what's the while we've got that? I mean, maybe explain why is so you do the 20 hour, and then after that it's every 100 hours
every 100 hours or once a year.
or once a
Once
year.
a year.
But
As far as the oil change goes,
what's the key, particularly? And I know a lot of the bass boat guys are real familiar with breaking boats in, but on the pontoon side, that 20 hours, what's important? Why is it 20 hours?
there's a couple things. It's number one is usually on the boats there's something going to be broken on it because it's the world we live in. Well, why is my boat? Why is this gauge not work or this not work? But so we're able to fix those things usually during the 20-hour service. But more importantly, uh, whenever you're breaking the engine in, there's a lot more metal that gets into the oil and a lot more it sulfates a little bit. So you don't want to run for a long period of time on that braking oil. Even though the braking oil is the same as the regular oil, it's just during break-in there's a lot more heat. There's a lot more breakdown of metals and a lot of carbon buildup, and it all gets in the oil or oil, as they like to say up north. Uh, or in Florida. But you want to get that stuff out of there.
Yeah.
Get fresh stuff,
Okay.
fresh oil in there. And then same thing with the gear load. It's the same concept. And then we check the motor. Things kind of loosen up during break-in because there's more vibration. So beyond the actual oil changing, we like to do what we call a wellness check. We check,
Gotcha.
nuts, bolts, make sure nothing is out of place or hanging down, and also address any issues with the boat that's happened in that 20 hours.
And I will say Bentley with a 115. I'm looking at your profile pic. You don't look like you're super old. One thing that you can run into is you get a boat with a 115. Typically like a much older couple that they don't ever want to go fast at all, and they don't put any. They don't actually get on that motor at all.
Yeah,
and put any load on the motor, and that's something that definitely needs to be done while in that break-in period.
Yeah.
So,
And even if you don't run at that RPM very much, it still needs to see.
yeah.
The harmonics is really the important part when it comes to that.
So worth mentioning when we're talking about the pontoon break-ins. Usually the bass boat guys don't have too much trouble. They usually get out there and get on it too soon. So
they have problems with idling a lot. So doing the graphing.
Yeah. So here's kind of a shift in gears. First, thank you for your service, Eric. I think it made a career change in the marine tech field. I'm assuming with the USMC that you're a Marine. Currently an AMP, aircraft and helicopter mechanic, and 32-year-old vet. Thoughts on your job would be great.
Well, I grew up working on stuff. I never served in the military, but I do appreciate your service. I worked on cars a lot when I was younger. Probably definitely from probably the age of 13, and I still work on them for myself. But I didn't have a career in working on cars, but I enjoyed mechanical stuff. So I always ended up working on vehicles, my friends, family, and I did a little bit on the side when I had what I call a normal job, I guess. Compared to that, doing what I do now is night and day, in my opinion. I'd much rather work on boats because 90% of the boats we're working on are going to be outboard. So you're doing a lot of it stand-up work. You stand up and do the work. The only time we usually crawl around too much is when we're having to get under consoles or in bilge areas to do wiring, kind of stuff. But as far as the mechanical part, outboard engines is where it's at, in my opinion. I don't particularly like doing the inboard stuff. The IOs, where you have to basically work on a car engine in a boat. I'm not particularly fond of that, but we don't see near as much of that anymore. We still see it, but I would say 90% of our mechanical stuff is going to be on the outboard stuff.
So I'm gonna chime in on just a dollars and cents side of things, coming from a AMP. So I've got an aviation background. I used to manage aircraft mechanics. Flew in the Navy, got out, did that for a little bit of time in the civilian side. Um, I would definitely say, money wise, being an A&P, depending on what you're doing in the aircraft world, you're probably a lot more likely to make a lot more money than being in the marine tech. But that being said, money's not everything, and it all depends on your quality of life, and there's obviously a lot of stuff that goes into that. The opportunity, though, because I mean, aviation stuff just is a lot more expensive, and aircraft mechanics, depending on what you're doing, can end up getting paid, a whole lot more, I think, than the marine mechanics. But again, that's a very broad brush, and that's trying to make a one size fits all. But to consider that. But if you found a great shop like ours and it's down the street from your house and you want to be able to spend more time with the kids and you don't want to worry about airplanes crashing and it being your fault, there's a lot of different things to consider in that. It may be a freaking awesome fit.
That's why I decided not to be an airplane mechanic.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I get that. But it's a
It's a lot. There is schooling that you can, you know, get, and it's pretty good schooling. You pay a good bit for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you'll learn anything. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a good job. So I did all on the job training, and like our business sends us to Mercury and Yamaha school. So last week I went to Yamaha school for a week. So it's usually a couple times a year. You go to Mercury school one week and the Yamaha school the next week, and you'll learn probably a lot more on the job and doing the training through the manufacturers than you usually do at a place like, I'm not going to name any places,
right.
But anyway, places like that you pay them 30 grand for a year to learn the same thing you probably learned at a dealership. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think you'd probably rather. I'm going to assume if he's been an aircraft mechanic, he's probably fairly handy mechanical wise.
Yeah. I mean, you
probably
got a lot.
Fairly easy for you to get him schooled and trained, and the way you want him to be.
Right.
So,
and I know, and probably in that world, you have to be real meticulous with things, and things have to be so. Well, it kind of works that way in the marine world. If you're a good mechanic, and you want things to not come back and bite you in the butt. So.
Yeah, I will, and this is the Navy officer coming out in me. But if you haven't used your GI Bill, if that's still something you've got on the table, you may look around. I know there's some programs they've got with that where you can do an on-the-job training with certain companies and shops, where you take that GI Bill and it kind of helps augment a lower salary and all that kind of stuff. Typically, that's got to be with pretty big shops, but maybe something worth looking into. Take advantage of everything you got. But
I will say that all the mechanics that I have currently, and most of them in the last 10 years, have never been formally trained at a school. We've done all on-the-job training. So.
All right. Well, I hope. All right. Follow up on the pontoon on the Bentley. Is it normal for a depth gauge to disappear at around 20 miles per hour?
I would say it's likely just because of the nature of that beast. There's a lot of turbulence back there. So if there's air getting in between that transducer and the water, then it's going to be a lot harder for it to read. Now, you can do some minor adjustments to the transducer to help with that. But typically we see that with the amount of turbulence coming off those pontoons, it's hard to get it to read, at wide open throttle. So, but sometimes lowering it in the water a little bit more. And I have seen where the transducer's been bumped and it flips up. So you just need to double check, make sure that transducer's solid, solidly mounted in the water right now. Because they do have a feature where if you hit something, it'll pop it up and keep it from breaking it all the way off the back. So,
and from a safety standpoint, out of concern, so you're 20 miles an hour, or faster running your pontoon boat, and you're worried about knowing the depth to slow down or adjust your, are you about to hit something? The safest thing is going to actually be, in my opinion, and you may agree
GPS.
or yeah, a GPS unit with a moving map. They're so stinking affordable today, and they're so good. You can, I mean, even the basic stuff, you can program them in. Hey, anything. The anglers use them for certain reasons to be able to say, hey, I want to see, highlight anything less than 5 feet. But from a safety standpoint, and you can see your track. You don't even have to have all the fancy contour lines, but being able to see what's ahead of you at 20, 30 miles an hour is far more important than, keep in mind that transducer, even if it's working, it's behind you. And so that reading that you're getting at 20 miles an hour is, I mean, it's already, so, are you, and, depending on the body of water.
Yeah, sometimes those
Yeah.
channels do weird stuff. So you might be, no matter what you got, you may be in 5 feet of water, nowhere near a channel, out
So
of nowhere.
that's, but in terms of, yeah, if it's a moving map with a depth finder and you lose that depth on a pontoon, that sure seems pretty common. Um, so, but if you don't have a moving map, I mean, of course, you can do it, I guess, with your iPad or something like that. But I mean, the small hummingbirds, any of those 5 inch, I mean, even the 7 inch graphs just really aren't that expensive given the benefits they give you. Um, so, of course, you can get way, way fancier if you really want to. All right. Well, I'm going to pull one. Well, while we're talking about depth finders, here's one I saw in the Avid group. Anybody running a through-hole transducer on an aluminum boat? I'm fairly confident we haven't put one in
No, I'd
an
rather not.
Avid. Yeah. Um,
Now, and there's some regard people interpret that two different ways sometimes, but you have a through the hole transducer, and then you have a through hole transducer, and the difference between the two is like in a bass boat, we can put a normal like puck style transducer that will read through the hole, and then you have one where you drill a hole and you stick it through, and then you
right.
screw it on, and it's got basically a puck on the bottom. Which on a aluminum boat, that's what if you wanted to read through the hole, you would have to cut a hole in it and put an actual through hole transducer in. I
Hmm.
don't know of anybody who's done that. I'm not. I'm not completely against that as long as you can find a good spot and you're confident it'll seal up. But anytime you put something on the bottom of the boat, you're going to change the dynamics of how that pad rides. So that would be the only thing I would be hesitant about is how big is that transducer. I've seen some through hole transducers that are like bulky, large objects, and I've seen some that are kind of thin. But most of the ones I've seen at least stick out, a quarter of an inch, and so that's going to change the dynamic of your ride too. So the more back there that is in the water, more resistance. It'll push your nose down. I've actually seen people put side imaging transducers
Yeah.
on the pad of their boat, and it would make them fall off the pad and crash their nose into the water.
Yeah, that just seems like you're opening yourself up for, I don't know, the benefits of putting a through hole on an aluminum where you got to drill a hole and all that. I don't know, that I'd be interested to hear what are the pluses versus you're cutting a hole in the bottom of your boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, you do it right, you may not have any problems, but I know, it makes a little more sense to me on the fiberglass stuff when you can epoxy it in, scratch down to the
Yeah,
bare fiberglass, and but you
just
know,
don't have that choice with the aluminium.
yeah, and I get on the big boats, that you put those through holes.
It's not that big a deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but I don't know. That's an interesting. All right. I see a comment about the passing of Ray Scott from Bass. Um, yeah, that I guess he passed away Sunday. So I've got to honestly, do a little research and find out his true history.
No.
I just haven't been, into the bass fishing world as much, but certainly a lot of from what I've heard, did a phenomenal work for our for the fishing industry, which of course is near and dear to our heart here. Um, all right, we'll get a tech question here. I have an older Minn Kota Edge, maybe a 2010. Sometimes after running for a bit, I usually use the lower speed set at 2. The motor stops working for a minute. I bypass the switch on the water. On the older Edge.
When you say you bypass the switch, let's see. Are you talking about you just putting it on constant instead of momentary?
What's the follow up? Happens once or twice a day, but it doesn't fix the issue. A minute later, it comes back to life and works normal.
Okay. Well, but if you, okay, so if you put it on constant, it's working. So that means, does it do it? Does it do it no matter which setting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, I got you. Well, it sounds like you need a switch. It might be as simple as that. So, so that's good news.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's probably got some. Oh, it doesn't work on constant either. Okay. Um, and you're bypassing the switch on the foot, the actual on off and constant switch on the side of the foot.
Maybe a new motor.
Not necessarily. I think it's probably that toggle switch because because it's got off. Okay, so it's off, um, on, which would be we use the momentary switch, and then if you put it on constant, it bypasses the momentary and just puts straight power to it, no matter where you have it here. So you just need a 3-way switch to be replaced, and I think that'll fix your problem.
All right. Let's see. What else did I have? That one's too long.
That looks nice.
Let's throw that one up there. Should I have the hub replaced? Is the question.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. That looks like probably a Yamaha prop. Um, I would tell people if you have a Yamaha or even an Evinrude, the torque tabs that are on the back of both of those, whether they have the torque tab on them or if they're just the little plate that's got the little hole in the front. They the there's a little pickup on the front of those torque tabs or the solid plates that actually grab water while you're going down the lake, and it diverts that water back up a little channel and then into your exhaust housing. And what it does is it prevents that previous picture. It's supposed to help prevent overheated hubs and melting the hubs.
Okay. And here's another. This is a Yamaha broken bolt thermostat housing. What's the best way to remove this broken bolt?
Heat. Get your little torch and heat that spot up, and then, but in this case, it's sticking out far enough to where you could probably put some channel locks on it, and you just barely put any pressure on it while you're heating it, and it'll just slowly start moving. And you take the pressure off, it'll stop the heat off, it'll stop moving, and then start again. Sometimes you can put some penetrating oil on it, but in most cases, that's not going to help either. I'm looking at the back of that motor. I'm seeing kind of rust, and more likely it's a saltwater situation. So heat's usually probably the only way to get it out. And sometimes it pulls the threads out, and you have to put a helical in it.
Oof. Well, all right, guys. Well, man, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for the questions. A little career discussion. Always fun to have a little different. Yeah. So if you come up with more questions, again, throw them in the comments. Or if by some chance you're watching this far into the video down the road, if you've got questions, drop them in there, and I'll probably pull them up either next week or the next opportunity we have for Tech Tuesday, which should be this week, I think, based on the way the schedule's going. But we appreciate you joining us. Please make sure you are liking and following us wherever you're watching this. And wouldn't mind you hitting the share button. That would be awesome. Um, so I guess back to work.
Welding time.
Welding time. All right. Well, that sounds fun. So we're gonna get back at it, guys. Thanks again. Hope you have a great afternoon and a great week. And man, it's that time of year. The weather's awesome. So get out there and enjoy the water. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.